All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast. I am your host, Antoine Rivers, and today, for my Conviction Collective, my people, look at the room around you right now. Just look at the room around you. I just want you to ask, is it a sanctuary? Is it a place for like peace? Or is it a cage of hypervigilance? What is your space right now? We often think we've escaped our past. We changed addresses, we changed zip codes, we changed circles. But if we're honest, sometimes the gray concrete of our psyche remains long after the steel doors stop closing behind us. Freedom isn't just geographic, it's environmental. And your environmental investment is the ultimate scoreboard for your redemption. So today, we're talking about the visual shift, how your changing environment reflects your internal transformation. Because if the walls around you still whisper survival, your nervous system will keep responding like it's under surveillance. Let's break this down. Welcome to the Conviction Fiction. All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and we're going to talk about the architecture of survival. So, this is for all my listeners out there. Before we talk about beauty, before we talk about creativity, before we talk about sovereignty, we have to acknowledge the architecture of survival. All right. Spaces actually shape your behavior. That's not motivational talk, that's environmental psychology. Think about the environments designed for containment. Normally, it's flat gray walls, hard edges, cold metal, fluorescent lighting that hums instead of glows, like windows that don't open, doors that lock from the outside, everything arranged for observation, not inspiration. Those spaces are engineered for control. They are built for surveillance, not comfort, for monitoring, not like to help somebody find their true meaning, for like compliance. Nothing centered around creativity. And when you spend enough time in environments like that, your nervous system adapts to it. It learns the rules of the room. You sit differently, you speak differently, you move differently, you think differently. Your body becomes calibrated to hypervigilance. Now, hypervigilance is not paranoia, it is a biological adaptation to chronic stress. It's your nervous system staying alert because historically, alertness kept you safe. It kept you out of trouble. It's scanning for tone shifts, how people moving, for body language, for footsteps, for changes in the atmosphere. But here's the deepest layer. Even when you leave that environment physically, your nervous system does not automatically update the software. If your new space still mirrors like survival architecture, like a blank wall or harsh lighting, minimal personalization, your body does not register that you're safe. It registers the familiar. And the familiar feels like truth. Now, you may have your own apartment, your own house, your own key, but if the aesthetic still whispers temporary or bare or don't get comfort here, your brain continues operating in survival mode. And this is what I call the concrete psyche. Now, concrete is durable, it's protective, it's strong, but it's not flexible. It's not the most flexible material. It's not imaginative. It doesn't breathe, right? So, with that being said, we have to get out of the mindset of that concrete mentality, especially when we're coming home. When your internal world, your whole internal world has been shaped by rigid structures, your imagination narrows. You focus on immediate needs like the bills, food, stability, avoiding mistakes, avoiding conflict, avoiding any kind of regression. And that makes sense. I get it. But here's the hidden cost: visual monotony limits possibility. When your eyes only see gray, your brain stops expecting color. When your environment lacks variation, your thinking often lacks the ability to expand. It's like when everything feels functional and stripped down to the basics, your vision for the future often becomes equally stripped down. We just gonna make it. We just gonna survive. We're not gonna mess up. We're not gonna draw no attention. And that's survival architecture living inside your decision making. Now you can't keep your space minimal, like just because you love minimalism, but because you don't fully believe you're staying. Your nervous system, your brain, your wiring don't believe you're staying. You don't invest deeply because a part of you still feels temporary. Now, that architecture of survival trains you to detach. You don't want to personalize too much, don't accumulate a lot of stuff because you got to move anyway. Don't dream too loudly because in survival environments, attachment can hurt. But here's the shift. Here's the shift, fam. If you never consciously redesign your environment, you may unknowingly recreate that whole psychology of confinement inside freedom. Now, for a lot of you that may have went over your head, here's what I'm saying. You may be free, but you're still braced. You may have opportunity, but you're still guarded. You may have space, but not feel spacious. And that matters because transformation is not only cognitive, it is environmental. Your surroundings either reinforce survival or they invite expansion. So the question becomes, does your current space reflect containment or growth? Is it designed for monitoring or for meaning? I mean, let's think about it. Like, look around your space right now. Is it structured like a holding cell or like a headquarters? I'm looking around my space and I got lights and stuff. I know, see the green screen and stuff, but I have lights, cameras, all this kind of stuff. It looks like a little mini studio. But I thought about it because I was in a room recently. It wasn't jail, guys. I didn't go back to jail, no, nothing like that. But it was kind of bland. I was at a friend's house who had recently got released. Actually been out for 5 years now, but the space just didn't look homely. So before we talk about adding anything new, we have to recognize what we might still be carrying forward unconsciously. We have to think about that. And if you haven't picked it up, please go pick it up. Go to Amazon.com right now. Search my name, Antoine Rivers, and pick up the book, Turning Forward, The Work Beyond Fear. And there's also um, No Turning Back. All right, that book is there, also available. And I'm working on something very huge, going with an online course. Hopefully that will be done by, I guess, quarter two. For y'all don't know, quarter two, like we're looking maybe June-ish, right? Um, but now we're talking about the architecture of survival. And this will be included in that course because it's very important. You have to understand your environment. Now, the architecture of confinement is subtle. It's very subtle. You really rarely even think about it. Like cold lighting. Like in it, you don't need much anyway. It's the one of those things where you'll say, I'll decorate it later. And this is just fine for now, that kind of mentality. But fine for now can become permanent limitation. Now, for the people that are listening, the first step in internal transformation is awareness. Look at your environment without judgment. Just observe it. Just see what's going on. Is your space helping your nervous system relax, or is it quietly reinforcing vigilance? Because until you intentionally shift the architecture around you, your body may continue living like it's still being watched. And sovereignty cannot fully bloom in a room that feels like surveillance. Let's just be honest. If you always feel like you're being watched, you cannot grow or you cannot expand. It's like you're still in jail in your own house. Now, the sensory part of it is like you have to have a breakout, right? You have to break out of this notion. All right. Once you recognize the architectural survival, the next step isn't dramatic, it's sensory. Transformation doesn't begin with a speech, it begins with a shift in texture because your nervous system doesn't respond to motivation, it responds to signals. For many people who lived in high stress environments, whether it's institutional, chaotic, or chronically unstable, the senses were deprived or overstimulated in very specific ways. Harsh light, hard surfaces, repetitive sounds, echoes, limited color, limited softness, limited control. Over time, your body adapted and it learned to tolerate discomfort. It learned to sleep lightly. It learned to brace, to get ready for anything. But here's what's powerful: your nervous system can also be restrained through sensory contrast. When you intentionally introduce organic textures into your space, like wood grain instead of metal, some like warm lamps instead of overhead fluorescent lights, maybe a fabric instead of plastic, you're doing more than decorating. You're sending new neurological data. Now, there's real science behind this. I know you guys are saying, like, oh, he on some Martha Stewart redecorate your life type stuff. No, natural materials and varied textures stimulate the nervous system. This is the part responsible for rest, digestion, creativity, and repair. Studies show exposure to wood tones, natural light, plants, and just diversity lowers cortisol and stabilizes your heart rate. The translation, let me just break it down for you. Your body begins to exhale. And for some people, that exhale is unfamiliar. That's the sensory breakout. It's the first moment you realize I don't have to be braced up right now. Maybe it's the first time you buy a solid wooden desk instead of using whatever was cheapest. Maybe it's replacing a metal folding chair with something cushioned and a little bit more intentional. Maybe it's just hanging artwork that tells your stories instead of leaving your walls blank. Those aren't small acts, they are declarations to your nervous system. Cold steel communicates durability, but also detachment. Raw wood, it communicates grounding and growth. That's what we want to try to get into. I'm not trying to redecorate your house. I'm just trying to put you on some more stuff that will help you understand like the environment that you create actually can affect your mood and has affected your mood. Like fluorescent lighting, right? It communicates in specs. You know those big long tube lights. Warm lighting though communicates welcome. When you change what your skin feels, what your eyes see, what your ears hear, you change your internal state. And that's what we are trying to do, change the narrative. But it begins with you. And here's the deepest layer. Here's a deeper layer. When someone has lived in environments where comfort wasn't prioritized, there can be subconscious resistance to softness. Yeah, I said it, softness. Softness can feel unsafe. Softness can feel suspicious. Silence can feel like something is about to happen. That's how deeply the body remembers. So sensory breakout isn't just about adding beauty, it's about tolerating safety, learning to understand that you are safe. It's allowing your body to sit in a room that feels calm without scanning for threats. That's a practice, especially if you've done some time. That's rewiring. When you introduce a plant into your room, now I'm talking about just a plant, you introduce life that requires care. And then if you add some texture, you introduce depth and you bring in a little bit of color. You invite emotional expression. You move from monochrome survival to multidimensional living. And here's something subtle but powerful. Your Your brain builds memory associations based on your environments. Did you know that? In all of your memories of stress, pressure, and hyper alertness happen in gray, rigid industrial spaces, then intentionally surrounding yourself with warmth and organic textures helps your brain form new associations, new room, new signals, new patterns. This is the beginning of dissolving those mental bars, not through denial of the past, not through pretending it didn't shape you, but through building contrast so strong that your nervous system has to update its expectations. The first state of transformation isn't identity, it's sensation. Before you say, I am free, your body has to feel free. Your mind has to feel free. Before you say, I am safe, your muscles have to unclench, not ready to knock somebody out. Before you say, I'm building something new, your senses must experience something new, something different. For the conviction collective out there, this is where redemption becomes tangible because redemption isn't just about forgiveness or opportunity, it's about recalibration. And it takes a lot. Trust me. I've been working through this for years and writing it and documenting it. I've talked with friends who experience the same thing because at the end of the day, it's all about moving from bracing to breathing. And that can start with something as simple as a lamp, a rug, a bookshelf, a textured wall, a plant that you have to take care of weekly. When your immediate view changes, your imagination expands. And imagination is what survival environments quietly suppress. The sensory breakout reintroduces the possibility. They're no longer reacting. You're no longer reacting. You are responding now. You are no longer just enduring space. You're shaping the space. And the moment you begin shaping your space, you begin reshaping yourself. And it kind of helps if you have somebody to help you out. There's no nothing wrong with that, a spouse, a friend, or whatever to help you out because this is something that we're not used to. We have to reclaim that creative sovereignty. Now, the sensory breakout is about contrast. We talked about it earlier, but creative sovereignty is about control. There's a massive difference between occupying a space and owning a space. When you occupy a space, you just adjust to it. When you own a space, you shape it. That difference is psychological, very psychological, before it's even physical. In restrictive environments, everything's already predetermined. The layout, the colors, the materials, the lighting, the bedding, the schedule, even the allowable personalization is regulated. Your input is minimal. That's what I call the cell mentality. Now, the cell mentality, let me break it down. It conditions you to believe that you shouldn't get too attached. Like, don't rearrange too much. Don't expect permanence. Keep things neutral. And any moment you might have to leave. Stay adaptable because anything can change at any time. And that mentality doesn't change magically or it doesn't disappear when your circumstances change. You can be in a brand new apartment and still subconsciously treat it like a temporary housing project. You can own a home and still arrange it like you're about to leave. Because deep down, part of you may still feel provisional. Creative sovereignty challenges that, right? Creative sovereignty says that, this space right here, where I'm around right now, look around. This reflects me. This layout serves me. It has intention. The design is intentional. The environment supports my future. Now let's contrast the sale mentality with what I call the workshop mindset. A sale is about restriction. A workshop is about, you guessed it, creation. In the sale, you got space that limits movement. Now in the workshop, your space enables you to produce. In the sale, those objects are controlled, right? In a workshop, tools are available, whereas time is endured behind the walls. In a workshop, time is invested because you're building something. So when you begin curating your space like a workshop instead of a holding cell, something shifts internally. You're no longer minimizing yourself to fit the room. You're arranging the room to fit your mission. And here's why that matters psychologically. Decision making builds agency. We talked about that before on many episodes. Decision making builds agency. And for that to happen for you, it's very, very important that we look into um, if, like designing your room. Because if you can design your room, just simple, choose the color of your room. You are practicing preference. When you select artwork, you are practicing identity. When you invest in quality furniture, you are practicing permanence. Those may sound small, but for someone who spent time in environments where choice was restricted, choosing intentionally is a radical act. Creative sovereignty forces you to answer a powerful question about yourself. What kind of life are you designing? I had to ask myself that. What kind of life am I designing? Because if my environment answers that question for me, then I might need to make some changes if it's not what I want it to be. Okay. If your space is chaotic, cluttered, and reactionary, it may mirror internal overwhelm. If your space is sterile, blank, and impersonal, it may mirror guarded detachment. If your space is curated, expressive, and purposeful, it may mirror clarity and direction. This isn't about wealth, it's about ownership. You don't need designer furniture to practice sovereignty. You need intention. You need to look around your environment and say, look, I chose this. I placed that there. I built this. This is reflective of where I'm going. And here's where it becomes public. Your aesthetic is a declaration. When people enter your space, they read signals, they read order, they read ambition, they read stability. Whether you're growing or not, even before you speak, your environment communicates. That's why creative sovereignty is not vanity, it's visibility also. It says, I'm no longer hiding, I'm no longer bracing, I'm no longer minimizing myself to survive. I am building. So, to my conviction collective out there, the workshop mindset also reframes how you view resources. Instead of asking what's the cheapest option, you're going to start beginning asking yourself, what supports my future? Instead of saying this will do for now, you can start beginning to say, what aligns with where I'm headed? That shift, that minor shift from reactive purchasing to strategic curation is internal growth made visible. And here's a deeper truth. When you practice sovereignty in your environment, you strengthen sovereignty in your decisions. You actually strengthen those decisions that you make. And it's a point to that, a very poignant point, because when if you can design your room, just your room, with intention, you can design your schedule with intention. If you can organize your desk with purpose, you can organize your goals with purpose. If you can invest in the right tools for your space, your workspace, your workshop, you can also invest in the right relationships for your life. Your environment becomes a training ground, not a cage, not a waiting area, a headquarters of such. Creative sovereignty transforms your living space into a command center for your future. And once you experience that shift, once you feel the difference between occupying and owning, you never want to go back to a vision of living again. I know I don't, because sovereignty feels different. It feels grounded. It feels deliberate. It feels expansive. It begins with the courage to just say, hey, look, this is mine, and I will shape it accordingly. This is my space, and I will shape this accordingly to build for my future, to explain who I am, to explain my story. Now, of course, there's going to be a scoreboard for this, man. It's a scoreboard for everything, right? Um, when I'm talking to you guys, I'm always measuring or trying to measure progress in obvious ways, right? And most of us do. We look at our income, we look at our credit score, maybe our job title, how many followers we got, or maybe how many opportunities we have out there. But what if I told you one of the most honest scoreboards for your redemption is your living space? Not because of luxury, not because of square footage, but because of alignment. Your environment is the external manifestation of your internal stability. When someone is still operating in survival mode, their space often reflects it, even unintentionally. And that's not a call out to anybody, but look around your space. You can still be in survival mode. It may be hyper minimal, not out of preference, but out of emotional caution. It may be cluttered, not out of just personality, but out of mental overload. Just don't got time to clean up because my mind is working too much. I cannot stop and organize my space. It may feel temporary, even if it's a permanent spot, because survival prioritizes function over expression. And in early rebuilding stages, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. You get the basics, you get your bed, a table, a place to sit. You're basically staying or focused on staying afloat. Stability first, beauty later. But here's the turning point, guys. If years go by and your environment still looks like you just arrived, something inside may still feel like it hasn't fully arrived either. Redemption is not just about proving you can function, it's about proving you can flourish. And flourishing leaves visual evidence. A mind that no longer needs to hide begins to beautify. A nervous system that no longer needs to brace begins to soften up a little bit. You have to become a person who believes in your future and invest in that future, in that present environment that you're in right now. This is where we confront a misconception. Aesthetic beauty is not vanity. It is psychological security made visible. When you hang art, you are saying, I plan to be here. When you invest in quality furniture, you're saying, I deserve durability. I know sometimes you can't afford it, but you have to do what you can to get where you want. When you organize intentionally, you are saying, my life is worth being structured. My life is worth being structured, and I'm going to do it myself. I don't need no guards or the warden or CEO or anybody telling me how to stay organized, to stay structured. And that beauty becomes an indicator of an identity that shifted from survival to sovereignty. Now let's talk about minimalism, right? There's minimalism born of clarity, right? Intentional, calm, and focus. But then there's minimalism born of necessity, stripped down, cautious, provisional. In early rebuilding stages, necessity minimalism is understandable. You're conserving resources. You don't have money to go and get no rooms to go. You're prioritizing essentials. You're trying not to overextend. But at some point, necessity minimalism should evolve into intentional expression. We're talking about growth. That doesn't mean clutter. It means personality. It means your books reflect your growth. Your walls reflect your story. Your lighting reflects warmth instead of interrogation. Now, this scoreboard of redemption is subtle, but it's undeniable. Ask yourself, does my space look like I'm hiding or building? Does it feel like I'm bracing for impact or planning for expansion? If someone walked into your home, would they see a person surviving? or a person becoming? Because here's what's powerful, guys. Your space doesn't lie. You can look behind me. We got the little billboard up that says conviction fix. This is a green screen. But right now, right behind me, it's under construction. I can say I'm healed. I can say that I've moved on. I can say that I'm confident. But if my environment quietly reveals that my nervous system is somewhere else, then I gotta make some changes. If you still sleep lightly in a room that feels sterile and cold, your body may still be guarding. At one point, I used to avoid personalization because it didn't matter. You know, part of me still felt temporary. I didn't know. I was scared to death. Redemption shows up in small upgrades, guys. Upgrading from whatever works to this actually represents me. Upgrading from I'll deal with it later to, you know what, I'm really proud of this now, right? I'm no longer reacting. I'm moving with intention. And here's the true conviction collective. When your environment begins to reflect growth, you start protecting it. You clean it differently, you maintain it differently, you respect it differently because it symbolizes something deeper, and that is your progress. Your living room becomes evidence. Your workspace becomes evidence. Every room about you becomes the evidence that you are progressing, right? And that should make you proud. It should make you proud. It isn't about comparison, it's about congruence. Does your space align with who you say you're becoming? If that's not, shame on you. You need to change the information because redemption, guys, redemption at the end of the day, redemption isn't abstract, it's visible. And when you can look around your environment and see proof of expansion, proof of stability, proof of care, you actually reinforce your own growth daily. And that's the real scoreboard. And it updates in real time. Real time. It happens right in front of you. So, with that being said, guys, I want to um, just share with you um, like what it feels like to embody the new environment. Um, at some point, the shift stops being visual and starts being embodied because the goal isn't just to decorate differently, just have a plan or two. The goal is integration. When your external beauty and your internal peace begin reinforcing each other, you create a feedback loop that sustains transformation long term. And here's what that looks like. When you walk into your space and your shoulders drop automatically, you sit down and your breathing slows without effort. You look around and instead of scanning for a threat, you feel alignment. That's embodiment. You're relaxing. Your environment is no longer something you're adjusting to. It's something that reflects you so clearly that being in it strengthens you. But this doesn't happen by accident. It requires maintenance. And maintenance is where many people quietly regress. Let's be honest. Survival habits are efficient. They creep back in when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're hungry, when you're overwhelmed or distracted. Clutter starts accumulating, lighting becomes harsh again, spaces become neglected, intentionality fades. And what's subtle is that when your space begins to slide back toward disorder or emotional neutrality, your internal state often follows because environment and identity are constantly communicating. This is why maintaining curated spaces it's not superficial, it's protected. When you clean your space, when you are reinforcing um, that this is where I want to be, you're supporting clarity. When you reorganize, you are reinforcing structure. If you repair something that's broke, you are reinforcing responsibility. These are actions. They may seem mundane, but psychologically, they say something powerful. They say that I'm not reverting. There's also another layer here. When you begin to embody your new environment, you stop seeing it as luxury and start seeing it as a baseline. Calm becomes normal, order becomes standard, warmth, all that becomes expected. It becomes the new standard. And that's what we're trying to do. in order to change our narrative. Now, when calm becomes normal, chaos becomes uncomfortable, right? That's growth because survival mode often normalizes chaos. It normalizes unpredictability. It normalizes instability. It normalizes tension. But embodiment rewires your whole baseline. You no longer tolerate environments or relationships that feel like cages. You recognize quickly when something is disrupting your peace. And here's where it becomes deeply personal because my space is sacred, not in a mystical sense, but in a protective sense. My space is the place where I recalibrate. It's the place where I think clearly. It's the place where I can plan, where I can create. My space is my headquarters for my future. And that sovereignty shows up in little behaviors that I have. I host differently. I work differently now. I rest differently. When you have this type of space, guys, you no longer treat your home like a weight room. You treat it like a foundation. And family embodiment also means you stop apologizing for your growth. You don't downplay improvement. You don't minimize your upgrades. You don't say, oh, it's nothing, because it's not nothing. It's evidence. And here's the final challenge. Look around your space again right now. You probably see some stuff that you want to change or you want to lighten up. Find one physical texture that represents your commitment to sovereignty. Just one texture. Maybe it's the grain of a wooden desk that you chose, or maybe it's the softness of a couch that signals like you deserve to have a good place to rest. Maybe it's a certificate, a framed certificate that represented the discipline it took in order to graduate that class or that course. Maybe it's the plant you kept alive. That's actually proof of consistency. But if you can identify it, anchor to it. If you can't identify it, go and create something. Add one object, one texture, one element that says, I am building, not just surviving, but building. Because redemption isn't just about what you escaped, it's about what you construct afterwards. And that's what we try to highlight on this show, probably more so than anybody else that may be doing the same thing, right? Concrete wasn't containment, guys. Canvas, that's a little bit of creativity. That steel structure, fluorescent glares, all of that was inspection, surveillance. But now, when your environment shifts, your nervous system shifts. When your nervous system shifts, your identity stabilizes. When your identity stabilizes, your future expands. That's embodiment. That's sovereignty. And that's the full visual shift. That's what we are focusing in on today. A visual shift by creating new environments. Now, if this show did something for me, like if it did something for you, like just remember your environment is not background noise, it's your biography, it's your testimony, it's the silent evidence of what you believe about yourself. So if this did something for you, share it with somebody. Tell them what we're doing over here at the Conviction Fiction Podcast. Go get some of the books. Because if you're truly about transformation, if you want to transform your room, or if it still feels like surveillance, then we here to tell you that your body will live like it's being watched. It was necessary for us to go through this. Concrete kept us intact. Concrete made me strong. Concrete is not meant to be permanent in my life. Canvas is. Canvas kind of stresses. Like I'm able to absorb color. I can invite creation. And here's the truth I want you to sit with tonight. You don't fully escape survival. You replace it. You replace steel with wood. You replace glare with glow. You can replace bracing with breathing. You can replace provisional living with permanent ownership. Your space should make you feel like a CEO of your future, not a tenant of your past. And if it isn't there yet, good. That's good. That means you're aware. And awareness is the first brick removed from the wall. I challenge you this week, guys, to change one texture, one lamp, one wall, one desk, one chair, one plant, one frame vision, not for aesthetics, but for alignment. Because your environment is the ultimate scoreboard for your redemption. And the score is not about perfection, it's about progression. You are not just someone who survived. You are someone who is redesigning, someone that should design your space like your freedom depends on it. Because in many ways it does. Support the mission because you are the mission. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and invite someone else who's ready to improve from concrete to canvas. This is the conviction fiction, and we just don't change narratives. We build new environments to live them in. See you guys next week.